Good morning, church. We are into our third installment of our series on Ruth. If you want to follow along with our story today, we're going to be in Ruth chapter 3. And we're going to just continue this journey through this wonderful book. To give us our little recap, on last week's episode, in 450 BC, roughly, upon returning to Jerusalem to restore to its former glory, Ezra the priest and Nehemiah the governor, the policymaker, set about to accomplish two primary goals. One was to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, and the second was to return people to following the Torah, the law of Moses. And under doing this, they enacted a policy as laid out in the law of Moses that all Israelite men were to, if they had married a Moabite woman, were to divorce them and send their Moabite women and children away. As we can recall in the law of Moses, that Moabites, even to the 10th generation, so again, the great granddaddy or grandmother, if there's any Moabite blood, were not welcome into the assembly of God. And so these men were required to send off their families if they were of Moabite descent. And it's in this time period that someone decided that it would be a good time to retell the story that's an important piece of Israelite history. That is the story of Ruth. And that story begins, we have a nice, wonderful family in Bethlehem, the house of bread, Elimelech and Naomi and their two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, and a famine hits Bethlehem. And they go off and search for their survival to the land of Moab, where their two sons marry these two Moabite women. And then eventually tragedy strikes, and Elimelech, Mahlon, and Chilion all drop dead. So now we are left with three widows, and they return, they grieve, and they come to return to Bethlehem. And Orpah decides to stay home, as was her right. Again, there's no bad guy in the story, in the book of Ruth. But Naomi and Ruth have returned to Bethlehem. And in order to eke out an existence and to survive, Naomi has settled it, and Ruth has volunteered to go glean along the fields to pick up the leftover harvest so that her and Naomi, her mother-in-law, can have food to eat and to survive. And it's here that by chance, Ruth has found herself gleaning in the fields of a man named Boaz. And while she's out working, she's caught the eye of this man named Boaz. And over time, he begins to bestow different gifts upon her, right? He welcomes her to come dine with him, to eat with him. He tells her that he is welcome to the water that is brought for his workers. She doesn't have to go walk several miles to find water. And then, again, a fantastic correlation to our upcoming Walk for Water event. But she's caught the eye of Boaz, and he has welcomed her, and he has told her to not to go to anyone else's fields, but to only come to his fields, to stay with his workers so that she can be safe and that she can be provided for. In the end of chapter 2, that tells us she stays till the end of the harvest, which is approximately 4 months. So for 4 months, Ruth has been going day in and day out to attend and work and glean in the fields of this man named Boaz. And that's where this Netflix special begins today. Is we are gathered at the table. I like to imagine Ruth and Naomi are sitting at their kitchen table over a cup of coffee early in the morning. And Naomi tells Ruth, hey, I have to begin to think of a future for you. We have been surviving, gleaning from the leftover harvest, but we need to begin to think about a future for you. She says, my daughter, should I not try to find a home for you where you will be well provided for? And so Naomi has worked up this plan. She tells Ruth that it's the end of the harvest. There's this custom, this ritual for the landowners this time that when you've culminated all your harvest, that the landowner, in this case Boaz, is going to go sleep kind of in the barn, where it's kept in the storage houses among the piles of grain and whatever products have been harvested, as kind of a way of celebrating this good year's harvest. So she tells him, tonight, you are going to go to Boaz. She says, tonight he'll be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash and perfume yourself and put on your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. And so Ruth, she gets into her bubble bath, goes through her entire self-care routine. She's up and ready. She puts on her favorite Bath and Body Works fragrance or Chanel No. 5, which are the only two types of perfumes I know the names of. And she puts on her favorite dress, and she is ready to go meet Boaz at the threshing floor. Now, here's where some of the instructions Naomi has given Ruth are a little bit perplexing. She tells him, wait till he's asleep, right? After he's finished celebrating, he's eaten and he's drinking and he's had a good time, and now he is laid down next to the harvest. And wait till he's asleep, and then go to him. And then you are going to take his blanket and uncover his feet. Now, for lots of reasons, I find this part of the story deeply uncomfortable. I think I've shared before, I do not like feet. And so these instructions to uncover his feet are just odd. They're perplexing. And Naomi gives Ruth that once you have uncovered his feet, wait for him and he will tell you what to do. This is a bold plan that Naomi has given Ruth. This is a very direct plan that Naomi has given Ruth to kind of reveal the intentions of Boaz. Certainly there is the possibility for something for a mature audiences only to occur, but Naomi is counting on the character of Boaz, that this is a person who is wanting to be faithful to God, that will do the right thing. So when you go to Boaz and you find him sleeping on the threshing floor, uncover his feet and wait for him to tell you what to do. And so it tells us that when Boaz had finished eating and drinking and he was in good spirits, he went to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. And Ruth approaches. She gently uncovers his feet, and she lays down next to him. It doesn't tell us how long it takes for Boaz to wake up. I know if someone were to uncover my feet in the middle of the night, I would have an instantaneous reaction. I sleep like an ancient Egyptian mummy, fully bundled around. But it tells us that at some point, something in the night startled Boaz. And he wakes up, and next to him, there's a woman. He went to sleep, and there wasn't a woman. But now he's woken up in the middle of the night, and there is a woman next to him, and he is startled, and he shouts, "Who are you?" Obviously, he knows who Ruth is, but if you've ever been woken up in the middle of the night, clearly you're disoriented. You're not all there. You're waking up. Who is this woman who is sitting next to me? And Ruth says, it's me. It's me. It's Ruth. And then she tells him, since you are our kinsman redeemer, spread the corner of your garment over me. That statement means something so much more than Ruth saying, hey, Boaz, I'm a little cold here. Could I share this blanket with you? That statement is her way of saying, Boaz, will you marry me? Will you accept me and take me on in marriage? And Boaz begins to gush a little bit here. He gets excited. He says, the Lord bless you, my daughter. This kindness that you have showed is greater, that the kindness you have showed to your family, that you have showed to your mother-in-law, when you had every right to go back to your homeland, to go back to Moab, when that would have been your prerogative to do. Instead, you have shown dedication to this family. And that is admirable. And then he continues on by saying, you haven't run after the young men either. You haven't run after the young wealthy men or even the young poor men, but someone maybe younger than I am, but instead, you have waited for me. And he says, do not be afraid. I will do what you ask, but there's a slight problem here. To which he tells us, it is true that I am your kinsman redeemer, but I am not the closest of kin to your late husband's family. If we want to think about it, Boaz, for our sakes, is maybe he's the second cousin of Elimelech, and there's actually someone who's a first cousin. Now, we haven't talked much yet about what does exactly this kinsman redeemer mean. It's not mentioned too often throughout Scripture. So what exactly is this? There was a custom found in practice by the Israelites and also in other ancient Near East cultures where there's a strong clan identification that if a man was to pass away before him and his wife had children, his brother was then to take her into marriage, to continue on the family name, and so on and so on and so on, until there is an heir to carry on the original husband's clan, right? Later on in the New Testament, the Sadducees, who don't believe in the afterlife, are going to try to trap Jesus with a quiz. Suppose there's a man and he dies without kids, and then his brother marries her, and then he dies, and his brother marries her, and then he dies, and so on and so on. When they get to heaven, who will be this man's wife? And he says, you don't know what you're talking about. But this was a practice in these cultures and practice among the Israelites that this family clan, the inheritance were to be passed on and carry on the kinsman redeemer, to keep this bloodline, to keep this family identity going on. And so Boaz tells Ruth and says, I want to, I will do everything I can, but I am not the closest of kin to you, but there is someone else. So he comes up with this plan. He says, Ruth, go home to your mother-in-law, return to her, and I will go meet with this other cousin tomorrow, and I will see if we can't work something out. And so they part ways for the night. Ruth returns back home, and I like to imagine she's walking up, late at night, early in the morning. It's dark outside. She can see the kitchen window and there's a light on. And she enters in through the front door, and there's Naomi sitting at the kitchen table, cup of coffee in hand. You can tell that she hasn't slept all night. And before Ruth can say a thing, Naomi looks at her and says, What happened? What happened? What happened? What did he do? What did he say? Tell me everything. And she's trying to get to the point of asking, are you married? Right? Like, has this happened? Are you going to be married to Boaz? What has happened? And Naomi kind of responds saying, or Ruth responds saying, I don't know. And she tells her mother-in-law this entire story of how the events have unfolded that night at the threshing floor. And Naomi says to her daughter-in-law, says to her, wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens. For the man will not rest until the matter is settled. So the next morning comes, and I can imagine that Boaz has gone early in the morning to the town square, which is where the prominent men and landowners and business owners, they meet to talk about business gatherings and things for the community. And he finds a nice bench, along the walkway, and he's waiting for this other kin, this other relative of Elimelech to show. And it tells us that when the kinsman redeemer he mentioned came along, Boaz said to him, come over here, my friend, and sit down. Now, the scripture does not give us a name for this other kinsman redeemer, for this other family member, but we're going to give him a name just for the sake of storytelling. We're going to give him a name to make it feel more personal. So let's call this other cousin, this other family member, this other relative, let's call him Adam. All right, so we have Adam, who's the closest of kin, and then we have Boaz. Then they're trying to work out some sort of deal here. So Boaz says, Adam, why don't you come over here and sit down? And then Boaz calls over the elders of the town. There's 10 of them. He says, elders, won't you come sit here and join us too for this discussion? And they begin talking, and Boaz goes, so I'm sure you saw that Naomi's back. Yeah, I saw that. I saw that she came back. It's a shame what happened to Elimelech. I mean, it's our family, I can't believe that the men would have dropped dead like that. So it's a horrible thing. And Boaz kind of approaches it and says, well, I've heard that, that Naomi is going to sell the property. She's going to sell the land that belongs to our kin, to Elimelech. And since you're the closest of kin, I thought I would bring it to your attention to make you aware that you have the option to purchase it. You have the option to redeem this land for Elimelech's family's name if you want to. And Adam hears that news and he kind of thinks it over and goes, yeah, I could always use some more property. That's always a good thing. I could expand my farm or maybe get some more cattle. Maybe I'll really venture into the sheep business I've always wanted to. And he looks to Boaz and says, yeah, I'll redeem it. I will redeem this land that belonged to our cousin Elimelech. And Boaz goes, that's great. That's awesome. Fantastic. But by the way, you remember that their youngest son said, of course. And he said, well, when they went off to Moab, and his youngest, when they came of age, married a woman named Ruth. I'm sure you've seen her around. Yeah. Well, as part of redeeming not just the land, you have to redeem Ruth as well, and you have to marry her. To which this kinsman redeemer, who we are calling Adam, says, then I cannot redeem it because I might endanger my own estate. AKA, I'm already married and I have a good thing going, and I cannot show up at home later this afternoon saying, hey, honey, I married this young Moabite. Let's just try to make this work. I cannot do that and live at peace at home. That's that translation of endangering my own estate. I cannot marry this woman. And then Adam, this man we're calling Adam, says to Boaz, you redeem it yourself. I cannot do it. And I imagine Boaz is showing some restraint. He's not trying to fist pump the air out of excitement, but just, you sure? Okay, I can do this. And in front of the other 10 elders there, Boaz and this man we're calling Adam do the logical next step, and Boaz tells Adam to take off his sandal. Again, I really do not like some of these practices with the feet. And this is where we get one of these hints that the story of Ruth, even though it's set in the time of the Judges, was actually written during this time of Ezra and Nehemiah, because the author has to explain this practice in Ruth chapter 4, verse 7, when he says, now in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. And this was the method of legalizing transactions in Israel. So if you just think about the grand scheme of history, we have made progress, because now when you buy property, you might have to get some notarized piece of papers. Or if you're selling property, you might have to prove through some paperwork but you at least get to keep your shoes. Adam takes off his sandal, hands it to Boaz to say, you are now the one who is able to redeem this family. I have passed this on to you. And Boaz announces to the elders and to all the people, he says, today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all of the property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from the town records. Today you are my witnesses. And then the elders and all the people of the town who are gathered around for this exchange respond saying, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you have standing in Epaphra and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, who Tamar bore to Judah. And the plans for Ruth and Boaz to marry have been finalized. Boaz has taken his place as the kinsman redeemer for this family and has enacted on that plan to redeem them and to take them under the garment, under the corner of his cloak, to take them under his wing, to shelter them, say, you are my family now. And that's where our story ends for our time together this morning. Next week, we're going to get to the final few verses of the book of Ruth, but what really captures the entire point of this entire book. But if you'll allow me just a few minutes to actually preach for a few minutes. I've just been telling a story for the past little bit, and if you can give me a few minutes to actually preach. This kinsman redeemer who was closest to Elimelech's family, who was not given a name, but we decided to call Adam, right? This gentleman, Adam, for a variety of reasons, he could not redeem Ruth and her family, right? He was unable to be their salvation. But Boaz was able to step in and redeem Ruth and to redeem Naomi and to give them hope. This man we are calling Adam was not able to, but Boaz could. And what's true for us is Adam, for a variety of reasons, is unable to redeem you and to redeem me. Sin and corruption and evil has entered this world, and Adam is unable to offer hope for us. But Jesus is able to step in and to redeem each and every single one of. Jesus is able to step in and say, I can pay the debts. I can take on who they are. I can welcome them into my fold. I can cover them under the corner of my cloak. I can take them under. Jesus can enter in as our salvation. In just a moment, we're going to continue in song. But before we do so, I want to give you some encouragement and to let me play the role of Naomi for you this morning. If you remember, Naomi gave Ruth this bold plan to go before Boaz and to uncover his feet and to reveal his intentions. If you would let me play the role of Naomi for you, all you have to do is come to the feet of Jesus. You don't have to take a bubble bath. You don't have to put on your favorite Bath and Body Works scent. You don't even have to put on your finest clothes. All that Jesus is asking for you is to come and sit and dine with him at his feet. And that, if that's something that you want, and if that's something that you are hoping for, is how can I be redeemed? How can I have hope when everything bad is happening? Jesus saying is, come, I can do this for you, and I want to do this for you. There's elders, and there's deacons, and lots of other brothers and sisters at this church that would love to help you on that. It would be my greatest honor if I could help any person here come to the feet of Jesus. And I encourage you, if you need that help, to come forward as we stand and as we sing.